All right, so we'll dive into the steps of setting up a purchase order approval. And for this scenario, we're going to do where it's a purchasing manager needs to approve any PO that's greater than $10,000. Okay, so we're not going to be able to release a document or a purchase order that's over 10,000 without going through our approval process, and we'll demonstrate that today. But here are the steps that we're going to go through to set this up. So first, we'll create a new workflow from the purchase order approval workflow template. Then we'll adjust this so that it only is triggered on purchase orders over $10,000. And then we'll configure the direct approver method so that Olivia receives my PO request. And then we'll add a notification so that the original approval sender is notified when the request has been approved. So once Olivia goes and approves my PO, I can I'll receive a message that that's been done, and then I can return to the document if I need to send it to a vendor or anything. And the most important step and final step is to enable your workflow so that it's actually live in your system. So we'll do all of those steps today. And without further ado, we'll jump into a live demo. All right. Are you seeing my screen okay?
Yep, we've got it.
Perfect. Okay, so the first step is to start with a workflow template. So I'll go ahead and search for workflow templates. And here are the different templates that come out of the box with Business Central. We always recommend starting with a template. It's much easier to tweak a template to what you need than it is to build one of these from scratch. So I'm going to scroll through and I can see these are organized by the different categories that they relate to. And then go down to purchase documents and I'll select the purchase order approval workflow. You can't actually modify the out-of-the-box template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and click new, and then I'll do a new workflow from this template. All right, so it's automatically generated this for me. I'm going to rename this to be Stone Ridge Connect. I'll do one. Yes, I do want to rename this. Okay, so we have a couple columns here. This first column is the when event. So this is the event that's going to happen in the system that's going to trigger the workflow. And then we have our on condition. This is what I use to filter down the workflow. So it's only triggered based on these conditions. And then the then response is the actions that I want to happen as a result of these events. So this is where you're going to do most of your configuration when it comes to setting up the different workflow steps. All right, so first thing we'll do is we will adjust the on condition so that this is triggered on any any purchase order over 10,000. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and click on this on condition, the first one. And I'm going to add a filter to the amount here for anything greater than 10,000. Click OK. Another important thing to note is that you also need to add this to your cancel line. So I'm going to go ahead and add that now. We highly suggest that you take the time to configure your approval, rejection, cancellation, and delegation settings for any approval before you deploy it in your system, and of course test that thoroughly. But for today's example, we're just going to take the happy path on actual requests being approved. We're not going to go through these additional steps of an approval request is rejected, canceled, or delegated. We're just going to focus on these two, for example, today. Okay, so we've filtered this to 10,000. Now I'm going to set up the direct approver method. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on this then response. And I know that there's multiple then responses because this is set up in that teal text as a link. Whereas if it's plain text like this, that means that's the only then response for that when event. Okay. We'll go ahead and click this. All right, and we can see all the steps of when this workflow is triggered. So first, it's going to add a record restriction. It's going to set the document status to pending approval. And then it's going to create the approval request. And you'll notice when I click on this line, it opens up this page down here so that I can change the settings for this specific response. I'm fine with showing the confirmation message. This is just going to say your approval request was sent. I'm going to not configure delegation today for this example. The approver type I can leave as approver to set up the direct approver method. And then I'll actually change this approver limit type down here to the direct approver, okay? And like I showed you before in our approval user setup page, Olivia is set up as my direct approver. All right, so I can go ahead and click OK on this one. So we've set the on condition, we've set up our then response. The other step we wanted to do is we wanted to create a notification when this request has been approved so that I know that my PO has been approved. So I'll come to this line where pending approvals is 0, meaning there's no additional approvals out in the system. And I'll go over to the then response and I'll click on this one to add one. So once everything has been approved in the system, it's going to remove the record restriction. It's going to release the document, put it in that release state. And then the third thing that I want to add, so I'll click in here, click the 3 dots, is that I want to create a notification. So I'm going to click this, create a notification for the 1%, and we'll see that changes. And so I could define a specific user, but what I'm actually going to do is just notify the original sender. So you'll see that went away. And then the notification entry type is going to be approval. And now I can click OK. And we're good to go ahead and enable this in the system. So let's go create a purchase order and test it out. All right, so I think we're going to purchase from First Consultants here. And we are going to get some deaths. And I think we need about 11 deaths. Oh, it needs to be more than 10,000. Okay, we'll do 15 deaths. Couple more. All right, so now if I try to release this document, it's going to give me an error. And it's going to say that I need to follow the approval process. So I'll click OK. And then I just come right up here and click request approval and send my approval request. I get that confirmation message. And now Olivia should receive an email with my purchase order approval request.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and share my screen here and I'll pull up my Outlook. And I actually did. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I did receive an email notification just seconds after you submitted it for approval, Ashley. So here I received a notification. It's letting me know. We'll open this up here. It's letting me know that Ashley Lords is requesting approval on purchase order 106018. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this link here. And that's going to directly open up my Business Central instance in that same company. And the nice thing is it brings me directly to that purchase order. So I can take a look at this here. I can see what it is that Ashley is purchasing. I can look at the total amount and decide if this is something that can be approved or if further conversation is needed. For this example, I'll say, yes, this looks great. I'll go ahead and approve this. So I go ahead and click approve. And as you can see, when I approve that, the status changed from pending approval to released. So it went ahead and released the purchase order. And so now this can be continued for processing. And it should have also notified Ashley via email that this purchase order has been approved. Ashley, did you receive an email? Would you like to share your screen?
And I've received that approval notification. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And you can see that I have a notification that my request has been approved. And I can navigate right to that document and go send it to my vendor if I chose to. All right, I'm gonna throw it back to Olivia to go through a general journal approval workflow.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. For our next example, we're going to walk through setting up a general journal approval. So I'm going to share my screen momentarily in Business Central, but first we'll talk through what we're going to do. So the scenario that we're going to simulate is that a controller of a company wants to approve any and all manual journal entries before they're posted. So in order to do this, we're going to use the specific approver method. So we're going to pretend that Ashley is the controller of our company. And so whether or not she's typically the person that approves my workflows or not for this specific workflow, she's going to be the one to approve that. And then, so we're going to create a new workflow. We're going to adjust the on condition so that it applies to general journal pages only. And then we're going to configure the response so that it's for a specific approver. And we're going to add a notification, just like we did in the last example, so that I will receive a notification once that workflow or once the journal is approved. And then, of course, we'll want to enable the workflow so that it goes into effect. So I'm going to pull my Business Central tab over here so we can walk through that. So I'm going to start at the workflow templates. And we're going to set up a workflow for a general journal batch approval. So I select this template and then I'll go up to the top of the screen and we'll select new workflow from template. Okay, so now this is a workflow that I can edit and add the details that I'd like. So we talked about how we want this to apply to a general journal. So I'm going to select my filter details and I know that I want this to apply to a general journal. And as you can see, there are different templates here. We could have this apply to a sales journal, purchase journal, payment journal, but I just want this to apply to the general journal entries that are made. Okay, and then I want to add I do want to select the approver type. So it's going to create an approval request. And then here, when it creates the approval request, this is where I can change what the different approver type is. So I do want to keep on the confirmation message. I do want the approver type to be approver, but here under approver limit type, I'm going to change this to specific approver. And then here I can add an approver specifically for this workflow. And you can see here, this pulled up an approval user setup window. You can see that normally, if I were using the purchase order workflow, for instance, that Ashley just set up, if I were to create a PO, Tracy is the person that's going to approve that for me. But for this specific workflow, Ashley is the one who wants to or needs to approve all journal entries before they post. And then the other change that I want to make to this is I want to set it up so that an email is received once it's approved. So here we see an approval request is approved. So once it is approved, the response that is there by default is that it removes the record restriction and will allow us to post. And I want to add an additional response. I also want to be notified once that is approved. So I'll select create a notification. And I also want it to notify the sender. So it's going to notify me. And we want to be notified upon the approval. And for this particular workflow, I want to point out here that we can modify what page opens up. It says link target page. So when I receive that email, I can control what page opens up when you click that link. So I want to open that general journal page. I don't know that page ID off the top of my head, but I'm going to go find it. I'm going to go into this other tab. I'm going to go to my general journals. And I'm going to do a page inspection to see what page this is. There, I can do that one of two ways. I can go to the help menu and I can go to help and support, and I can go to inspect pages and data, or I can do the more common for me anyways, do Control Alt F1, and that will also open up this page inspection. But here I can see that this page ID for this particular page is 39. So that's great to know. So I'm going to go back over here to my workflow that I'm setting up, and I'm going to put in page 39. And then it will open up that general journal page when that email is received. All right, so then I'm going to go ahead and enable my workflow. So I will select enabled. And we've got that set up. So now we're going to give it a try and see if we set it up correctly. So I'll go back to my general journal page, and I'm going to enter in a journal entry, and I'm going to make something up. We'll say that we're going to recognize some rent expense. Maybe we prepaid it previously, and I just want to have that expense post in this month right now. Okay, so if I go ahead and post this, it's running into an error. And that's a good thing in this context, because what it's saying is you cannot post this because the restriction was imposed because the journal batch requires approval. So I need to submit this for approval before it can be posted. So right here in the general journal page, I'll select request approval. And I'm going to send the approval request for the entire journal batch. There's a separate option that allows us to set up a workflow for specific journal lines. And it's letting me know an approval request has been sent. And Ashley, let us know when you receive that email.
Thanks, Olivia. I received that email. So now I can see that this page is linked here, and I can go right to this page and approve the general journal line or reject it or leave comments. But I'm confident that Olivia did this right. We need to recognize this rent expense. So I'm just going to approve it for this example. Okay. And now Olivia should receive a notification that her request has been approved, and she can come and post this journal entry.
Thank you, Ashley. I did receive an email. It just popped into my inbox here. So it's letting me know that you have approved my approval request. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the link here, and it's going to open up that general journal page in Business Central. So here we go. Here is my journal entry that I made. And now that it's been approved, now I should be able to post this. So I'm going to go ahead and post this, and those journal lines were successfully posted.